win the listing, and most people then shift into find the buyer, and that is a tragic mistake, because you might find the buyer and the vendor's not ready to take their offer because they don't know it's a good one, and maybe you don't even know it's a good one, in which case you just burnt your best buyer. Real estate is a roller coaster. It's an energy up and an energy down, and if you don't find a way to ground yourself and have some good practice that is in your life, not just in real estate, then it's tough, because you'll be on a high, you'll be on a low. And if you operate by your feelings, no wonder your income goes like this.
Today I'm with David Palfreyman, an auctioneer calling 500 auctions a year and a private coach to some of New Zealand's top performing agents. In this episode, you'll learn why auctions are actually about price discovery, not just about competition. The simple script that gets buyers to reveal their real number, and how one outlier auction result can damage your next 6 months of listing. Right, let's dive in.
And I reckon enticement happens oftentimes 10 to 15% below where properties eventually trade. If you really want to slim it down, an accurate agent who's doing their level-headed best, who knows the market well, they can only tell the seller, here's what you could have sold for if you were selling 2 months ago. I'd suggest you ask them something like, where would you love to buy it? At what price is this a no-brainer? Stop quoting price. It's a no-price campaign. Use price discovery. Don't breach your fiduciary obligation.
This episode is brought to you by Real Growth. If you're an agent who wants more listings, more income, and you want the exact strategies you can use to achieve success, you're in the right place. I'm Ben Hawkey, and this is the Real Growth Podcast.
Hey, David, you're both coaching and training agents, as well as standing in the auction rooms every single week. So there's not many trainers across New Zealand that have that combination of both the trainings and the auctions. How does being in both shape the way you coach and train real estate agents on a daily basis?
That's a good question. And I think, and shout out to Tom Panos, who I respect immensely. He does the same thing. And I think I've probably made being a professional auctioneer more of a priority, but as a result, it's made my training way better. And the thing that kind of going to where your question is, I get to see what the client thinks, how they're feeling about things, and ultimately the vendor, our client, whether we like it or not, how they feel about our involvement in the transaction is actually what matters. And you can't argue with someone's feelings. So you have to look at it and go, well, if they're feeling a certain way about that transaction, we can't control their feelings, but we can control our service and our communication. So for me, watching that with a very close lens, if you like, where the rubber meets the road, where they're considering a transaction, that is hugely variable, that space. And I certainly don't sit in judgment of salespeople, because it's the sellers, and sometimes sellers are, what's the right word, untamable. But nevertheless, I look at it and I think I can see where things can be improved here. And I see a little tweak there. And it's not just the sellers also, in terms of our engagement with buyers, and also using tools like an auction campaign to actually enhance our position in market as far as the property is concerned. So I guess long-winded way of saying, I've got a good deal flow, maybe, 500 auctions a year, and those are not just passive. I turn up and call the auction. For some I do, but for many I'm involved in the background strategically. I might speak directly with the seller at the request of the agent. I'll likely have a vendor meeting, and in many cases we have got both the agent and the owners there, and we're talking about the campaign to date. And then of course I get to be the man on the ground assisting the salesperson. And the beautiful thing about having built an auction business during what I would say is a downturn, the bulk of my auctions actually called post 2021. I think in 2020, I probably only did 100 auctions. So it was a little bit like this. Most of it was like this. And then in this transitional market we've been in. So for me, seeing that take place, it's not about the competitive bidding, although in many cases it is, and it's good fun, but actually the real strength probably that I bring to the table and the insights that I bring to bear in the training and coaching is I'm in the negotiating room. I'm chatting directly with that vendor. I'm talking to the buyer, sometimes the underbidder as well. Maybe there's some engagement with conditional interest in the room. And all of that gives me a real, I think, holistic viewpoint of the sharp point of the transaction, where it's make or break. And nothing frustrates an agent who is a good, honest person, but perhaps not yet learned how to work the process well, when they've got a great offer and the vendor doesn't realize it. So in this marketplace, I see a lot of that being a place that I can be effective.
And have you got an example of something that you exactly what you're kind of talking about, maybe expectations or handling different people's perception on what they should be paying, whatever it might be? Is there something you've picked up from the auction room and then the negotiation table that you've taken straight back and you've able to provide some support to your coaching clients around that? Maybe it's around negotiation, or like, is there anything recent that you can think of where you've gone, I've taken that from here and now I'm actually, supporting my coaching clients or in the training room with have you got any examples?
I'm smiling away because I've got one that has sprung to mind, and it's going to seem like a politician's answer because I'm going to weave a little bit into this story. But I think that nothing frustrates a salesperson more than if they've just sold a property in the street, right? And now they've listed a really similar property in the same, either the street or just around the corner. And like, I love your marketing, by the way, turn one listing into 2 extra listings. And that resonates so much with me because I think when it comes to growth, and I know this is real growth, let's look at that real succinctly. We're going to talk about making sure we get the sale, but it's super important here is not just, it's win the listing. And most people then shift into find the buyer. And that is a tragic mistake because you might find the buyer and the vendor's not ready to take their offer because they don't know it's a good one. And maybe you don't even know it's a good one, in which case you just burnt your best buyer. So I think the focus first on, list, sell for growth, but then also understanding that in a transitional market, the aspect of auction, which I see being super important, and you can do this with other methodology. I just don't think it's quite as easy as it is with auction. Most people think that auction is a mechanism for generating competition. And yes, it is. And that's why some agents will say to me, oh, I love auction in a hot market, or, I love auction for a specific type of property. And I know when they say that they've understood the competition piece of auction. What they perhaps have missed, and I think is critical in the current environment, is price discovery. Now, price discovery, I think the mistake is that even agents who perhaps have understood that auctions, price discovery and competition, they perhaps erroneously, and certainly I think sometimes the market erroneously thinks that price discovery is just, well, whatever the auction gets to, that's the price. That's a tragic mistake because you could sell for huge money and you'd be an outlier result, which is where I'm going to go with this story in a second, or you could sell for money well below the market. And once again, an outlier result, but in a downward direction. And it's not really the reputation that we want as salespeople. And certainly we wouldn't want our owners thinking or feeling that. But let's understand how that happens. So if price discovery is an important mechanism, and it's not just where the auction gets to, well, I hope, even without me telling you anything more, I hope that unlocks a new viewpoint for the methodology. So let me explain in a little more detail. The story that springs to mind, I won't name the agent, although I kind of want to, and if she allows me to afterwards, maybe in the show notes, we can name her, but I respect her. She's a good agent. She runs a great campaign. She hustles hard. She's a strong communicator. She wins the auction, not just the auction, but the listing. I think of the strength of her credibility, and I think she would say that she thinks she's accurate in appraisal. And I got to tell you, if you're a salesperson and you're watching this, you're thinking about your listings that you see coming on stream, and you think about that appraisal that you have to deliver, or maybe you already have. Let's be really clear what an appraisal is. Most people are trying to predict what a property is going to sell for based on what other properties similar to it have recently sold for. We all kind of get that, but let's just listen to what we're doing. I mean, you get financial advice and they'll say things like, previous performance doesn't predict future performance. And it's true. Now, there are patterns, I admit, and for sure, if we're trading in a range, it's a good factual way to be able to say to a seller, here's a ballpark of where similar properties have traded recently. But if you really want to slim it down, an accurate agent who's doing their level-headed best, who knows the market well, they can only tell the seller, here's what you could have sold for if you were selling 2 months ago.
Yeah.
That I think you could be really accurate with.
Yeah.
Now you're trying to predict where they're going to sell in 2 months, and that is fraught with risk. And I say that with a bit of humility because I've made the same mistake myself. Honest agent doing their level-headed best to appraise a property accurately, genuinely believes the property is worth whatever. And here's what happens. So yesterday's market is not today's market, and it may not be tomorrow's market. I've got this, salesperson who's listed this property. It's in East Auckland. Some people know that sort of area. We're talking, good sized sites, big homes, higher end, decent schools, all that kind of thing. This home was a plaster, but in the words of my salesperson, it's a good one, but it's still a plaster. And if you've recently sold a house which you think is a good plaster, but it's still a plaster, you know the stigma that's associated to that. Anyway, great campaign. Leading into the auction, I ask a few questions. Where did you appraise it? And if you were appraising it again today, knowing what you know now, where would you appraise it? And that's not I'm not trying to work out if the agent's doing anything dodgy. I'm trying to just understand on the new information, because we've looked backwards. Now we're talking to buyers. I love it if I've got a salesperson running an auction who is using the auction for price discovery, because that's what it gives you. It gives you a get out of jail free card, because when they ask you, what do you think it's worth? You can't tell them. A, it's a no price marketing campaign. B, you have to follow your client's instructions if they're lawful. And if they've instructed you to take it to the market without a price, and you immediately just start using a price, you're in breach of your code of conduct, professional rules, obligations. So we're now talking to a buyer who wants us to tell them the price, but if we were to do so, we'd be in breach. And not only that, what do we know? We're not the buyers. So in good taste, I think buyers that actually want to buy, they are probably not going to tell you what their maximum price is for this property. And do you know what? I don't see that as them lying to us. I think that is them being smart and recognizing we're an agent working for the seller. Why on God's green earth would I tell him my max price? So stop trying to get the max you can from a buyer who's showing interest. Twist your dialogue to something that they can give you more effortlessly and is genuinely less misleading. I'd suggest you ask them something like, where would you love to buy it? At what price is this a no-brainer? Yeah, if they're showing a bit of interest, don't try and get where they think it will trade or how much they might pay for it, whatever. Just, okay, well, where would you love to buy this one?
Before we move on with the episode, I just want to share something genuinely useful, especially if you're a real estate agent or a real estate business owner. Now, after analyzing over 2,000 property listing campaigns, we found something most agents miss. 20 to 30% of buyer inquiries are coming from local homeowners. And around 10% of those homeowners go on to sell their own property within the next 12 months, which means your future listings are often already sitting amongst those buyer inquiries. You just don't know who they are and how to uncover those opportunities. And that's why we created the Level Up Listing Toolkit. It's a free resource we have created that will show you how to identify those homeowners, nurture them properly, and ultimately convert them into future listings. You can download the toolkit by clicking the link in the show notes below, or if you're on Instagram or Facebook, just comment the word toolkit and we'll send it directly to you. All right, back to the episode.
And I reckon enticement happens oftentimes 10 to 15% below where properties eventually trade. But I wouldn't even don't get too locked up in the mechanics. You'll start to see the patterns if you work this yourself and keep good notes. I would just say at that point, the buyer doesn't feel fearful of telling you the number that they'd love to buy it at, that they hope they could buy it at, because that's not putting them into the orange zone, and it's certainly not taken to the red zone. That's in the green zone, where if they could buy it for that, they wouldn't have to think about it much. They're keen. And I think rather than saying, you might be able to get it for that, which would be misleading, don't fight them on their numbers either. So we're not going to try and say you could get it for that. We're just going to say, okay, because who cares? You want to buy it? Sweet. Okay. By the way, has the bank green stickered you to go and bid on this one? Not yet. Okay, can I help with that? By the way, probably sensible, it's a lot of investment here. Should we assist you getting a builder through it? Go fishing for the bits of due diligence that you'd expect a serious buyer, if you're used to running conditional campaigns, treat this like a conditional buyer now. Just imagine they're under contract. What do they have to tick off? Try and find out if they want to do those steps of due diligence. And now you're working with interest. That's how you work with buyers. Don't fight them on the numbers or try and talk them up. Don't expect them to tell you the truth about what they might actually pay, because I've seen the opposite, where an agent's got a top number out of them and then I'm negotiating with them and that number's vaporized, and it's because they're negotiating on another deal that they didn't realize they could buy at a certain price, and now because they can buy that one for 1.1, yes, a week ago, they might have paid 150 for this, but now they're max 112 because they can buy that one for 11. So that price discovery piece is real critical because you can get into dialogue with buyers and figure this out. But now you're working with the interest. Now,
so what's the dialogue again? So just for everyone to backtrack, so this could be in any conversation, whether you're an open home callback or you're just, you're talking to serious buyers. What would be the line that you would use? Just
I mean, I think it's like and you've got to find your own personality with this, guys. And I mean this very sincerely. An understanding of what you're doing and an authentic, just you approach is going to be, even if it's not as pithy and on point as some trainer's dialogue, will be way better for you. Don't get too wordy. I do. But if you can keep it real slight and just say, hey, well, out of interest, where would you love to buy this one?
Yes.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah. Makes sense.
But you'll find your own words. But the key thing here, what we're doing behind the scenes is we're not trying to ask them, what do they think it's worth? We're not asking them to try and predict what someone else might pay. We're not even asking them to engage with the really difficult and important, but not yet work of figuring out what they might get to on it. We're just saying, well, hey, is this one that you could like? Oh, yeah, it's not too bad. Okay, well, can I ask, is there a price you'd love to buy it at? Oh, the road's pretty noisy. We'd have to put in a big fence. Okay, no worries. Well, I mean, based on those things, I mean, where would you love to buy it? I mean, gosh, we get it for $1 million. We'd be keen. Do you think the owners would take that? So I've got no idea what the owners are going to do. All I can tell you is I've seen the tickets. They're moving to, hey, where are you now? Austria. They're going. They are going, and they do not want the property sticking around. The reason they've gone to auction is, I mean, obviously they want as much as they can get, but they just want to ensure that they've actually sold because they can't afford to have this sitting on the market for months. They want it gone. So, I mean, you tell me, are you serious at $1 million? Would you like to buy it? Pull the interest, sell the motivation, pull the interest, work the buyer. The reason why I tell you this story, though, is because, and threading through multiple things about both price discovery and the campaign is, and by the way, one quick part of this, because I've given you the dialogue and when you're in a conversation with someone, maybe they come through your open home, you're having a chat, or maybe you're lucky enough that you got them on the phone. But so often I think we get an email or a text message and we go, I feel trapped. What do I do? Price guide, please. I mean, you've all had it. What do we do? And we've naturally, I think most salespeople have got into sales because they are service people. They want to help. They actually, not all, but there's some that aren't, but lots of them really love people and want to be of service. And they go, oh, how do I help this person? And they feel guilty because they say, hey, I'm coming all the way from Auckland. I don't want to waste my time. Like whatever it might be, they try to put you on the hook for stuff. Just remember, I don't know, I think there's mixed feelings about the Real Estate Agents Act, but it helps us because we have a fiduciary obligation to the seller. We have a legitimate conflict of interest where we have fiduciary obligations to seller and we have duty of care and to treat buyers fairly on the other side. So all I can tell you is if you start giving price opinions to a buyer, you might accidentally mislead them, treat them unfairly, or even generate a conflict of interest. Now, what do you do with that? I mean, you could be a real smart ass and just say to the buyer who's asking, say, hey, appreciate the question, it's going to auction and it would be a conflict of interest for me to guide you on price. I mean, that's the truth.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's a pithy sales dialogue, but it's reality. Because I tell you what, I got a text message from a buddy of mine, first home buyer, bought not that long ago in Point Chev. He messaged me and his message, it's got an expletive in it. Should I swear on this podcast or we just keep it super PG?
Swear is fine, 100%. Yeah.
He's just like, Dave, why are real estate agents so shit? I'm like, oh, Chris, buddy, what's going on? I pick up the phone and I talk to him. I'm not going to name the agent or agency. What I'm going to say is that he missed out on a property that he tells me. And by the way, who knows? Let's just say that. But nevertheless, from his perspective, how did he feel? He felt like the agent he had dealt with was shit. And the reason he felt that way is they had told him a price and he went, that's too much. So he didn't bother taking it any further and then it sold for less than what the agent said. He goes, I would have paid more than that. I can't believe they sold it that cheap. Oh, it was worth more than that. I would have paid that. Yeah, but you weren't there. Oh yeah, but that's because the agent told me that price. Stop quoting price. It's a no price campaign. Use price discovery. Don't breach your fiduciary obligation. Don't get conflicted with trying to guide a buyer on price. It's an auction. Do you want to buy it? Oh, but we don't want to waste our time. We don't know if we can afford it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm getting heat up about it. Let's get back to the story. Here we go. So that's the
open level stuff, sell the motivation, forget the price, get the buyers in, help them through the process. Back to my story with the agent. We're chatting ahead of this campaign. What did you appraise it for? Funny enough, I think she said she appraised it 155 to 1.6. Yeah, it was 1.55, 155 to 1.6. But get this. So I said, well, where would you appraise it today? She goes, yeah. I said, oh, look, maybe, yeah, well, like we've actually had good interest, but I'm just a wee bit nervous because most of the buyers are sort of indicating that 1.4, maybe 2.15 max. So I reckon we're probably 1.5 to 1.55. Now, just note what's happened. In the past with the appraisal, she's talking about sales that had happened, comparing this property with historical information. Now she's listening to what the buyers are saying and comparisons they're making to other properties that they have available as options. If I'm a seller and I'm trying to work out where I should release my property to market, I'd be a mug to follow the CV, the automated guidelines, or even the agent's appraisal. What I should be paying attention to is what I'm competing against. What are the other properties? How does mine genuinely compare to those in the eyes of my target market? If you can figure that information out as a seller, and the way you do that is a good agent who helps you to understand that, then you can make a good decision. So agents telling me probably 1.5 to 1.55. Get this, auction was competitive. 3 bidders. They went up to 1.55. There you go. They stopped. They ground to a halt. At that point, I went and talked with the lead bidder, talked with the owner. Agent says to me, just so you know, I think they'll take the 1.55. Reserve was 1.6. I said, no worries. Let's just see where we go first. I talked with the owners. They basically told me the same thing. I said, just leave it with me. Let me see if I can get you more. We got them to 1.6. Now that it sounds all rather neat and clean and I'm the hero. Really and truly, it's so important to remember this as an agent as well. Like, yes, you can influence the market to a degree because you do have control over your communication and your marketing, but you can't make the market. You can just do the best as a chef with the raw ingredients in front of you. And I'm the same. So I'm happy. We're all 1.6. I think, sweet, we're going to sell it. Here we go. The owner's happy. Mission accomplished. But get this, the underbidder sparks up again. Now, they do not stop, and they do not stop. Now, this is an outlier result. Results may vary, and I can tell you this is a story that I'm reminded of because it stuck in my head because it was one of those very positive ones. But there's lessons to be learned here. So it goes and it goes, it goes. Owner sells it. I bring the hammer down. 1.9 million. It's miles above. It's a plaster. It's enormously above market. That's what I would say is a genuine outlier in the data. Now, here's what happens. We talked about it afterwards, the agent and I, and she's clever. She's onto it. She goes, I know I should be excited, but I'm just a little bit terrified about what comes next. So what do you mean? She goes, well, I've appraised other properties in the street. She goes, I just know they're all going to be referencing that sale. I'm going to have a real tough time. I was like, shit, you're right. Get this. The important thing to recognize, and this is the dynamic we have to understand, it is a mistake to reference one piece of historic sales evidence, whether that be a high sale or a low sale, because you can do the same in reverse, by the way. So the key part here is sellers would make a terrible mistake about the price to release their property. A less experienced agent would make a terrible job on an appraisal. And do you know what? Automated valuers and all that kind of stuff, do you think they understand if it's an outlier result? No way. So here's what happens in the background. The next campaign goes to market and it's quiet, struggling to get interest through. Why?
So guys,
100%. You've got to be looking at everything on this. You've got to look at what does the algorithm tell buyers the property's worth? Because I can tell you now, from whilst I'd say it is anecdotal, it's still empirical in a way because I've got a lot of breadth with this. If my agent is having a campaign and it's not performing how they'd hoped it would, we're diagnosing. We're looking at it. We're trying to figure out why. And I can say if your automated valuation, or CV, to be fair, is a similar effect, sits high relative to the quality of the product you're selling, you're pushing things uphill. You've got to call it out in your advert. You need to address it. Owner instructs us to let you know they also look at the automated valuations and they want you to disregard them, whatever the dialogue, like call it out and make sure that we're not overcooking this thing in the back end because it's an automated valuation. It hasn't picked up that's an outlier. It's just adjusted everything in the neighborhood higher. And has the market actually changed? No.
Hey, if you're getting value from this conversation and you're the type of person who doesn't want to listen to good ideas, but you actually want to implement them, we've built something for you. Every podcast we record, we pull out the key strategies and turn them into done for you action plans, scripts, and templates. So instead of frantically scribbling notes or telling yourself, I'll come back to that later, and never doing it, we're giving you the actual tools to go and implement what you're hearing right now. You can find all of this inside the Real Growth Listing Lab. Every guest, every episode, every strategy turned into something you can use to start growing your business tomorrow. Just click the link in the show notes. It'll only take 10 seconds. Right, let's get back into it.
It's a great story. Covered so much on there in terms of some dialogues, but also just the things to look out for, I guess, if you're pricing a property or doing an appraisal, or if you're setting expectations. So that's a great one. It was a Ray White office. Ray White?
It was.
Yeah. Right, gotcha. Okay, so changing tactics a little bit. I'm going to skip through a bunch of this because I know you talk a lot about in the internal dialogue or the internal narrative agents have with themselves. And I'd like to kind of talk about that now. Can you give me an example of the common limiting narratives that you see agents have with themselves, and how do you help agents kind of rewrite that narrative that might be going on internally? Like, have you got any common things that you kind of see?
You know what? I think it's really important to remember that there's life outside of real estate. You know, your self-worth shouldn't be determined by your sales success. And unfortunately, it will be at least partly derived from your sales success, because it's where you spend your time. And, you know, it might not just be your self-worth. It may literally be your net worth. It might be that you are in a difficult financial position. Let's talk the dollars first, because I think it's very important. Largely, I think salespeople fall into two camps. Either they need some pressure in order to feel motivated. If they've got plenty of money in the bank account, very hard to want to go out and do anything. Others are the opposite. You know, if they don't have much in the bank account, I actually see this almost like an overcompensation against being a good salesperson when they really need to be, because they're ethical. They don't want their need to bleed through and push a seller or hustle a buyer, whatever you might want to call it. I think that's what it is. But I think you'll know as you're listening to this which camp you're in. Are you someone that needs a bit of financial pressure? Business owners say, David, there's nothing like the cold winds of profit and loss circling up your trouser leg to make you very aware of what you need to do. If that's you, then make sure you haven't got a whole bunch of cash sitting in the bank account. Buy an investment. Give it to charity. I don't know, do something, because if you are sitting there and you just feel like you don't really need to work and that's what you need to feel motivated, we'll change it. And if you're the opposite, just remember that cash is not necessarily just a positive balance sheet. You know, maybe you need to get a revolving credit so you've actually got a good buffer that you've got for cash flow. It's debt, but it still gives you some liquidity in the moment, so you're not feeling anxious about, what do I do? How am I going to pay my mortgage next week? Like, that's a real systemic issue you need to fix. And then, of course, let's address a larger piece to that so that you're actually giving yourself a lot more runway for the future and creating some stability. I don't think it's necessarily healthy. I referenced in a positive way, Tom Panos. Now I'm just going to say, the guy's a demigod, $1 million agents. Good on him. And if you want to be $1 million agent, he might be your man. I mean, it's not to say I couldn't be your man, because I'll optimize for what you want. But I think it's a little bit silly to just optimize for being $1 million agent. I reckon you don't need that much in New Zealand to have a really happy life. I mean, it depends on where you're living. But, if you had a couple of hundred, maybe $300,000, net, you're going to have a great life. You don't need $1 million. I mean, maybe you knew. I don't know your lifestyle ambitions. But I guess what I'm trying to say with this is like, if you are not living or performing at the level that you thought you would, that creates this cognitive dissonance, because you go, I really thought I'd do better than this, and then it's down again. And then, some things happen that are outside of your control, like flagship listing you were planning to win, and then the owners, I mean, you know what, like kick in the guts as they list with your competitor. Shit, that sucks. But, even just they delay. And you've been banking on that one, you're so excited, and then their situation changes. Or the other side of it, maybe you're a salesperson that's actually gone out and you've got good stock in the market, or so you thought, and then you knew, let's be the opposite on this one. You knew it was worth 155. Everyone's at 1.4 on this. I just don't understand. It's worth more than that. And so you accidentally protect
the vendors from the real market, and you're sitting on the market for 6 months before you finally figure it out when you lose a listing and your competitor sells it for 1.3. So I guess those things happen, and we've got to be quite resilient to it. So back to the internal narratives, I think it's really important. And you know what? You might have even noticed this when I talked about that sale that I had a hammer in, I should say.
Yeah.
Like I suddenly caught myself. I was going to say I sold it, and I stopped. Because you know what? All I did was call that auction. The agent had done all the hard work. And not only that, even with the agent doing all the hard work, who really sold that property?
Yeah. The homeowner, the vendor. Yeah.
The owner. So we got to be really aware of that. We don't control the sellers. We don't control the buyers. We do have an agency agreement with the sellers. So whilst it's not control, it's still a commercial arrangement. So we can safely invest our time and effort there. It's not to say you shouldn't invest time and effort with buyers, but make sure you do so tastefully and ethically. Don't mislead them that you're working for them when you're not, unless you have a buyer's agency agreement. And alongside it, let's be real savvy to the fact that they go and buy another property that you didn't show them and you feel like they betrayed you, or you feel stupid for wasting all your time. You're not stupid for wasting your time. You gave good service. It always comes back to you. But just remember, they don't owe you anything unless you have an agency agreement. So I think, like, long-winded way of saying real estate is a roller coaster. It's an energy up and an energy down. And if you don't find a way to ground yourself and have some good practice that is in your life, not just in real estate, then shit, it's tough, man, because you'll be on a high, you'll be on a low. And if you operate by your feelings, no wonder your income goes like this. So you got to learn how to be professional, and you got to have some good practices outside of real estate that keep you stable. And hopefully that can help with your internal narratives, because I mean when I say, like, you're not determined by your recent bloody catastrophe, or, by the way, by your landmark sale.
Yeah. Have you worked with any agents, or is there anyone that you look at in the market go that they're kind of handling that really well? They're not going super high with the highs, and they're not getting in the lows, and the lows they're a pretty even keel type of person. Is anything there you're like, they're doing a really good job at that?
I mean, I'm going to talk, like, I have agents springing to mind, but some of them, those relationships are precious and confidential.
Yeah,
but I've got one which I think I've got
the name.
Yeah, no, I'm going to tell you. No, but I'm going to say someone that I'm sure doesn't mind us talking about him, because he's appeared on my podcast, and I'm sure he's appeared on yours, Mr. Diego Trallia.
Okay,
he spoke so candidly. He spoke so candidly on my podcast recently, and I thank you, Diego, if you're ever watching this, or hopefully someone watches this and says, David was saying nice things about him, because I think them. And here's a chance to say them. Like, he was so authentic and guard down on that podcast. Almost the exact, it's not to say David Seymour was not authentic. He was, but he was guard up. Like, I could tell the guy was expecting me to trap him at any minute. Whereas Diego and I have got a good working relationship with NZ Rec and stuff like that. So we had a good rapport, and he just shared about, the space, because he's not always in a good headspace. And so you listen to that podcast and he'll tell you about it. Landing into NZ Rec last year, the guy, I think, was on the verge of burnout. And, that's bad in the sense that he's got so many people that are reliant upon him. He's running a big business. And so he shares some things that he did with nutrition that really struck me. He was talking a lot about keto and fasting. I actually have experimented with keto, but I can't say I've done any 5-day fasts like the man has. But you watch that. I'd say watch that. And all I'd say alongside that is, I'm going to quote Jimmy Carr. I actually, I would say that I have a faith, and I only tell you that, and I guess I'm trying to be Diego in this moment, what's helping me, because it's not just other people, but I would say that I'm a person that's prone to those highs and lows. I've always been the person that's in the zone charging, or I'm off the boil, the phone's ringing. Oh, do I really have to answer that? It's a possible listing. Oh my God, it's going to be so much work. Like, if that's happening for you right now, you do need help. Reach out to someone like me, or if your manager cares about you, I'd like to think they do, like, go and talk to someone, because that's not a healthy space to be in. But it's important you recognize, if you've got to there, that that's not the end of your journey, but you do need help. And as I say, I take you back to that faith thing. That's something that is helping me is, and what does that mean? I love Jimmy Carr. Man, he's so funny. He's super controversial, but I think he's got a good heart, and he's really wise. Like, he thinks about stuff and talks about it. I loved it. His live show is incredible. Anyway, he says, because if I was to say the word God, I don't know what that would mean to you. But Jimmy's, to me, summed up beautifully, because he goes, well, because someone asked him, oh, do you believe in God, Jimmy? And he goes, well, I just think that there's a lot we don't understand, and God is the name we give the blanket we throw over the mystery. So you need to find your own way of being part of society at a level that's greater than just what meets the eye. Because if you don't have purpose, if you don't have that internal narrative that life is worthwhile and that there is hope, then I pray that you find it.
Yeah, appreciate sharing that. And for anyone who wants to listen to that specific episode, they can check out Home Run. That's correct. The Diego Triglia podcast on Home Run. Yeah, to find that
Absolutely.
on YouTube, Spotify, all the channels.
Mate, so I'm working on this project, the Home Run podcast, with a good friend Harps, who's, by the way, an incredible real estate videographer and photographer. We actually shot a pilot for a TV show where he cast me as a host of this thing where we basically get agents to pitch for business with real life homeowners. It was fantastic. I thought didn't get picked up by network, but he says to me, he goes, mate, we got to do something together. Why don't we do a podcast? I was like, okay, let's do it. So we're doing that at the moment. Shout out to realestate.co.nz also, who have become our naming sponsor and getting in behind to help get it out there. But the big thing with that, with those conversations, I reckon, is so often I end up chatting with someone and I think, man, like this is really helpful and would be helpful for lots of people, not just me. And so now I get to have those conversations and do it. It's long format. Some of them probably have a few little lulls in them consequently. But my focus on it is like, genuinely people I think are amazing and have something important to share. And then rather than me being just the only person that hears that, like you're doing, Ben, thank you, by the way, I hope that this message is, and what we've talked about will resonate for people. And if it helps just one person in a way that they look back and they go, man, I'm so glad I watched that one with David, then man, worthwhile, So anyway, long-winded way of saying, Diego's the man. He's a man who's experienced highs and lows. We all do. And it's important that you learn what works for you to remain centered, so that you don't end up just being whipped around by your emotions.
100%. And just finally, like, two more questions. One is just like, if people want to get in touch with you, whether it's in regards to auctions, because you're auctioneer in the Auckland region, or your coaching, what's the best way people can reach out to David and connect?
Mate, you'll track me down. I've got a rather unusual name. There you go, David Palfreyman. If you Google me, hopefully you'll find me. To be fair, and you laugh at this, I set up my family. Not all of them are on it, but because people sometimes struggle with my last name, wait for this one. You should be able to find me. God, I hope this works now. I haven't really used it much. Go to thepalf.com. The Palf, just the first part of my last name. It's much easier to spell Palf. Pretty sure that'll take you to like a little springboard where you can try and find different things. But yeah, if you Google me, you'll find me. By the way, if you just Google Palfreyman, get this, it's an occupational name from Middle England, and it's basically the guy who used to saddle up the horses for the lords and ladies. Oh. Palfreyman was a palfrey was a smooth walking horse, and I like to think I'm somewhat of a smooth talking horse. So there you go.
So I'll put the links and all that in the show notes as well. But just one last question to leave everyone with. If people listen to this episode, the people listening to this episode only would remember one thing to take away from it, what would you want it to be, David? Just like one key takeaway you'd hope they'd be left with.
I think you must control the controllables, and as hard as it can be, you've got to let go of the things that you cannot control. And sadly, as much as we wish that we could be the puppet master of what the buyers do and the sellers, well, we can't. So we can take 100% responsibility for our communication. And so I think focus on being the best communicator you can. And in order to communicate well, particularly like negotiation is just another form of communication. Communication with an outcome is understand what your role is. You're not the buyer, you're not the seller, you're not the decision maker. But if you can help your decision maker, that's the seller, to have good information, they'll make a better decision. And you're in control of your communication. You've got to let adults make adult decisions.
Before we finish, here are 2 simple actions you can take following today's episode. First, if you're a real estate agent focused on growing your real estate business, and you'd just like some clear guidance on what marketing and prospecting systems you should be focusing on so you can list more properties, make more money, and ultimately build a sustainable long-term real estate business, simply click the link in the show notes and book a marketing roadmap call with either myself or the team. Or alternatively, if you're happy with the income you're making, please just hit the share button and share this episode with an agent in your office who might benefit from hearing it. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening. I appreciate your support, and I'll see you on the next episode.